Welcome back, Farmington. Just giving you a quick update on day one of the Bless God Summit. It was a wonderful day. I had a little bit of free time before the summit started until 5 p.m. Today, California time. And so, with my jet lag, I felt like I had the whole day to go out and explore California. Got to go see the San Diego Botanical Gardens and had the opportunity to go try a indoor flight, basically like a parachute skydiving adventure. It was quite wonderful. So, thank you very much for those opportunities. Um, so as the conference began, it started out with day one, which was all about being and understanding what worldview really means. So our first conference, the first session, was all about worldview with Ruslan Arthur, and I butchered the last name, Asturian, and Mike Jones with Inspiring Philosophy. And it all talked about how Christianity has built our Western world. They're mentioning things like the ideas that as nations begin to secularize, they're seeing the decrease in both birth rates as well as donations in all charitable organizations, both secular and of the ones that are Christian oriented. Um, they're talking about how that there's three different types of worldviews. There's the worldview that the Christians hold, the secularists hold, and that Islam holds, and that your worldview is what builds your virtue. Um, so basically, the idea is that whatever worldview you hold is what will dictate what you will do, and the fruit that you show. So if there was a quote from Mike. He said that secularism is like a rose. You cut it off, it looks good for a day, and then it dies. I thought that was a quote. Anyway, the next session, these are just giving you a quick little recap so you can understand what I'm being able to experience out here in beautiful Carlsbad, California. The next one was with Dr. Sean McDowell, the co-author of the new and updated evidence um, for the resurrection. Actually, I had him sign my book today. It was pretty cool. And his talk was all about the evidence of the resurrection. He was mentioning a book by a man named Gary Habermas, who spent 32,000 hours of dedicated research in order to find the true, undisputed proof of the resurrection. But he was talking about this based on the idea that Gary would not have done these 32,000 hours unless he had doubt. That doubt motivated him to find the truth. And so sometimes our doubt is what stimulates us to do work for the kingdom because we desire in our hearts to know the truth, and that the doubt is what fuels that. Um, Sean talked about this idea of the minimal facts approach, where that if all the facts are supported, then all the facts are going to be true. So there was three different things, four. The first minimal fact these are kind of the undisputed facts of Christianity, um, that Jesus died by crucifixion. Number two, the disciples reported experiences with Jesus they believed were actual appearances of the risen Jesus. Number three, Saul became a follower of Jesus after having an experience he believed was of the risen Jesus. And four, Jesus' tomb was empty after his death. And so Sean takes the approach of defending the entire Christian faith based on those 4 points and those 4 points alone. And so he really honed in on point four, where it was all about why would you be using women who were known in the past to be less credible than men? Why would you start your entire religion, the most important fact that Christ has risen from the dead? Why would you have women be your credible witness if they weren't deemed as credible? So that was cool. He continued on all about different things about Christianity that are arguments against it and how you can help defend that faith. Up next was Preston Perry. This was on how to tell the truth. I had a great conversation with Preston last night at dinner, and so just being able to continue listening to him, it really is truly remarkable. The way that God speaks through him is unlike anything I've really ever seen. It really is beautiful. Um, this this talk was all about, are you ready for the persecution that we will receive? And we receive persecution because we have an offensive message. Um, this talked about how we live in this pluralistic society where we want two different ways to the same outcome. And since our message is offensive because we do not offer that, we have a thing called an absolute claim, which is what I believe is automatically right, which means that you are automatically wrong, or whatever you're arguing against. And the world hates this because people will they want to worship the gods that they want to worship. They don't want to worship the true God. They want to worship the ones that are false. And in a pluralistic society, they would be able to, because Jesus would not be the only way. It would be another way. You could be good and get into heaven and not necessarily have a relationship with Christ. And the enemy wants it this way because he wants people to be unsure. And you would have uncertainty in that situation, because if you have multiple means to the same end, you have no idea if you've actually made it to the end, because you don't know if you've actually followed the path. Anyway, that was a really cool talk. There's a lot of information in here, so I'm going to keep moving. I don't even know, fourth, fifth one. I don't know what one we're on. This one was with Daniel. This was about why church and why the world needs the church and why the church needs you. Um, we all have a role to play in the church, and without the church, we will struggle to walk. Um, Maybe for a season we might be all right, but we can't follow our journey in our faith without having people around you to help support you. I could talk about that one later, I guess. I didn't really plan too much on what I was going to say about that one. Um, the next one was with John Warner Wallace, or no, sorry, Jim Warner Wallace. He was an ex officer, and he retired, and so he had this identity crisis. And so the talk on this one was identity in Christ, and he used a bunch of references from when he was uh, in active duty and on the streets, about different situations that he would come into and realize that the people were having struggles with their identity. So they would choose, for example, he used this one. He told us not to say the name, so I won't. Um, this one suspect who was a former football player and had a knee injury and was put on drugs to help heal the pain. And as he kept going through the surgeries and the rehabilitation process, he lost his identity in playing football. And so he turned to drugs to mend that pain. He found the identity in football, and when he lost that, he didn't know who he was. And so we have to find uh, our identity in three different ways. Or, I'm sorry, we form our identity in three different ways. The first way is we look um, outside in identity. That's the name of it, where we look outside of ourselves and surrounding things, different people, different experiences that we have for our identity. Number two, we look inside out identity. That's what that one's called, where you're looking at your skills, your successes, or you have the idea of just be you, the things, your personality is what makes you you. Um, Unfortunately, these first two things are always going to fail because, one, you can't control these things and they do tend to change. And when you're looking inside of yourself, you begin to become too introspective. And that comes to a point where you have to admit that there's always going to be somebody who is a better version of you. So that leads it to number three, where you have the topside down approach, where you look to your creator for your identity, and your creator determines who you are. And he called this the three different steps. So for step one, it was how you perceive. Step two, or different, not the steps, but the different types. One was perceive, two was conceive, and three, you receive. Since the creator gives it to you, you receive it. Thought that was a really cool way to put that. He tends to have, especially in the Q&A section, just the ability to create these analogies like that. It was really awesome. And after that, we did a little praise and worship. That was phenomenal. And then moved into the Q&A, where they sat down on a board basically and allowed the audience to come up and ask questions. And I didn't write down the questions. I'm incredibly jet lagged, and by that time of the night, I was very tired. So I was just looking for some main points to help that really hit home. And again, from what was his name? From Jim Wallace, he had this one quote from who knows what question, not me. He said, "Don't let your purpose be your identity. Let your identity be your purpose." That one was pretty cool, the way that you can simply twist one word and have it completely change the meaning. And then he also, I guess actually that's really the only one that really hit home. I have a couple other notes here, but I don't really know where else to go with that. So anyway, that's what I pulled together. I know this was a long video, but I felt like this was important for me to be able to, one, just internalize the things that I had gone and experienced, and as well for the audience to kind of get a grasp of what the Blessed God Summit was all about. So that was day one. Tomorrow is day two, because that's how that works. And that one, it's going to be an all-day conference, starting at 9 o'clock and at 10. So good solid 13 hours. I'm very excited. Maybe somebody will be online with me next time. So anyway, have a good night. Take care. Thank you very much for this opportunity.